Welcome to episode number 12. I am your host, Sebastian Engstrom, and today Mike Pinette joins us. He is a holistic health coach. He is an artist, just spectacular one. The paintings that you see behind me are from him, and he's just a very connected human being. We go into routines, breathwork, hypnosis, anything that goes into a regular day and how to optimize it in so many different ways. And his entrepreneurial journey as in the restaurant industry. So, enjoy this episode. As high performers, we go hard. We never stop. We're constantly on the go. And that is very taxing on our nervous system, on our being. This is to give you some space, to let you breathe, come back to yourself, and let your nervous system relax. We're going to do so putting one hand on your heart, under your stomach, and we're going to do a breathing exercise. I'm going to skip 3 minutes and 3 seconds ahead. If you just want to get through the podcast, you close your eyes. You're going to say, I love you, and your name as you breathe in 3, 2, 1, in, out, in, and I'll forgive you and your name in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And now you're going to focus on one person, any person who comes to mind, and this person is going to have the biggest smile on their face. You can feel their energy, their joy, their happiness, because it's radiating to everything and everyone around them. They are in this amazing space right now because they feel the love. They feel the love that they always long for because they're helping people. They're giving to others. And they are just being themselves. The pressure is gone. The past is gone. And they're just right here, right now, in this moment. And they have everything that they ever longed for in this moment. Because they realize the secret to living is giving. They don't need to prove anything. You don't need to do anything to be good enough. They can just be themselves. So can you. Because I love you. You love you. So do you. See that. Feel that. Embrace that. And take it all in. Because we're all one. We're all one. It's a bit surreal coming into Oakland right now, and even activating all of our senses right now that we did with the deep breathing feels. I start feeling things, and that's why I bring that up in my gratitude or my affirmations every morning, that I want to feel my feelings today, because that is something that I've gotten away from so many days, so many years, even in my past. The more I try to do, the more I try to force things, the less comes through and the less I can really do, because I get so trapped into following a path that is not my own, just this structured, laid out, step-by-step process. And coming here and you sharing, oh, this is the same architect who built Hearst Castle, and there are all these beautiful flowers. There are colors. It kind of reminds me of a blend of, you can say, Puerto Rico and Oakland mixed together, and it's this beautiful, like, all these stairs coming up. You walk into your apartment, and there's a lot of charm. It's an older building, and there are just beautiful art hanging everywhere, and that's what you see here too. This is all Mike's art, and that's what you see at all the other recordings. The 2 pictures that are hanging besides me are from Mike as well, so he is the master artist, and really part of the co-creator of the Safina code, really from an artistic perspective, and the masculine and the feminine, all that came through with inspiration from Mike. So when I came in here, I'm like, let me just take a bit and just look at all the beautiful pieces here. And like I told Mike, it takes a lot for me to really be taken back or impressed by art. And I can just, I can stand here and just look at his pieces.
That means so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
And the next piece, just to go through the senses, then I smell, there's a certain scent, and maybe you have, I don't know if are there specific oils they use? There's something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a blend going on right now.
Okay.
I got that. It's, so we got Legends. It's like a mix of anise and lemon and copalba. There's a few other ones I can't pronounce, but yeah, that's the blend.
Okay.
Turns my brain on.
Yeah, because there's something that I mean, it's activating for sure, and that is one aspect that I'm stepping into more and more, is the senses, and really what can that start doing, one, with your body, but also then you go into your energy bodies, or your energy systems, or you can say your chakras, depending on how deep you go, and that's something I would never go into before. And I've been all into taking these psychology strength assessments. And there's one I took the other day, part of the team that I'm working with, the creative team for creating the platform and the website. And so it's a Gallup strength assessment, pretty cut and dry, incredible results. It always gives amazing insight. So anyone who hasn't taken a personal assessment, please do so. I mean, it's incredible. But the thing with this, the interesting thing is, he's like, okay, well, now I want you to do this. And this is another part. I want you to write down your answers. And then based off of your answers, I'm going to create a soul matrix. And there are certain oils that I'm going to prescribe to you, and certain crystals that I'm going to prescribe to you. Mm-hmm. And part of my old self is like, hey, hold on. But part of but that young, like that really my soul, I'm like, wow, this is freaking amazing. Like, I just want to dive head in. And I come here now, I'm like, Mike's got it going on, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm so connected. Like, it ignites certain things, and I feel like when you were saying engaging the senses, there's so much that we spend in our mind. There's so much time where we're not really connected to the body, and you can spend a lot of your life just observing it without feeling it. Like, you're not engaged, or just taking in the world around you, just because it's so easy to get in a thought loop, or just lost in future forecasting and whatever happened, the drama from the past. So anything that gets me just like in my body, and like whether that's breath, whether that's just smelling some pretty smells, it's all it's stacking all those variables.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to set the scene, I think even more of where we're at, there's a certain scent to this, and it reminds me of my grandmother. My grandmother was a very spiritual woman, a very artistic woman. She was all about, but the flip side to that, with a lot of artists, she was completely unstructured. She was like, oh, have a meal? I don't know, it happens sometimes. And my mom would be all about her. It's like, hey, like, these are children. They need to eat at a certain time too. Like, you can't just go on and and just love and enjoy and sit in nature and paint your paintings all the time. Like, it's amazing, but but that brings me back to very fond memories, and the way and the energy that you've cultivated here. And it's very unique. And even if you go like an hour from where I live in the San Jose, Campbell area to here in Oakland, incredibly different
vibe. And I know you're from this area too. Like, how did you end up here in Oakland yourself?
Yeah, well, my family moved me out here when I was like 10 years old, so I've been in California. I'm pretty acclimated to the West Coast, but I'm originally from the East Coast. Bounced around. I lived in Santa Cruz, lived in San Francisco for a while, and then kind of eventually moved to Oakland and been part-time living in the Bay for the last like, feels like 5 years now. So yeah, I like to travel around, and Bay Area is home based, but yeah, all over the place. Mill Valley up in the north. I'm enamored with the coastline. So
yeah. You said all over the place in the last 5 years. What has that looked like for you?
Man, looked like a lot of places. It was yeah, there were some like lifestyle things that guided me to travel a lot, but the initial thing was me moving down to Bogota, Colombia, to open some bars and restaurants and do some consulting for a restaurant group down there. I was a part of this. That was just the world I was in for about a decade. I was in the restaurant industry and opened a private club in San Francisco with a buddy of mine, and not that it was mine, but like I was working the bar for him, and then that led to Colombia, and then Colombia was about a year for a contract, and I just got the itch to keep moving around, and I pivoted out of that industry, and yeah, it looked like me just aimlessly flying by whatever wind caught me, but it was really just like cultivating self-awareness, trying to like separate some marbles about who I was and some beliefs about who I was, the old story that was like guiding my future. So yeah, it looked like probably reckless from the outside.
What really? What makes you say that?
It felt productive.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some after Colombia I came back for a little bit, and I was in a long distance relationship with a woman down in Colombia.
Let me just ask you before we start diving into after Colombia. Why Colombia? Why Bogota?
Yeah, it's hard to say no. It was just this company down there that had a really cool restaurant group that was just like, I had never been to Colombia. I didn't speak any Spanish. I didn't. Salsa dancing was foreign to me. So like, I was just like hungry for that. And it was funny, like, yeah, I had just gotten out of a relationship while I was in San Francisco, and I was kind of just like closing that chapter and just open to what was next. And then just this opportunity came up like a month or two later, and it was like, yeah, it was just, everything just lined up. It was just perfect. So.
And what was your experience like there in Colombia? I assume, was that the first time living abroad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my first time out of the country living like permanently. I've traveled around, but yeah, first time like immersing myself in a foreign place.
Okay, so there's a little bit of an ignorance that will come here now, but a little fun to it. So when I came to Missouri, and that was the first university I attended was in Missouri, and there was a guy who was from Colombia, and just to make fun of him, we called him King of Coke, right? And I think that's what quite a few people know Colombia as, is narcos, is a lot of drugs overall. But you didn't hesitate, and what did?
Well, the drugs were why I went.
No, okay, okay. They were glad we set that straight. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does have like it's traumatic history for sure. And they're still pulling themselves together for sure.
Yeah. But I know there's so much more.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're just incredibly passionate people. Like for me, coming from San Francisco and this culture and just the pace of it, not quite like New York, but San Francisco has a buzz. When you're in Bogota, when you're in Colombia, you're just on Colombia time. Like I had to learn, just pay no attention to like meeting times, like, dates that they have in mind for you to open up. They're just very heart driven. I just remember like somebody showing up to a meeting late and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I met my buddy on the way here," and we had to get to coffee, so I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, I guess like that's cool.
Wow.
So it's a whole different approach, and just like yeah, it was really refreshing for me to step out of the race and just be down there and like be present and like be heart driven, because they're just such a, yeah, everything is just out on the table emotionally for you, like whereas here I feel like there's just definitely yeah, it's a different energy in the Bay Area. But
what came up, like, do you have any other stories or examples that you feel like, wow, this stood out to me as a heartfelt moment where it was, you saw a difference,
yeah,
felt
man,
a difference?
Seeing, I mean, going to like a little music club, and like it just feeling completely like the odd one out if you're not dancing, and like being completely immersed in like swimming in this in the moment, like
Yeah.
everybody was just completely, yeah, I'm just so used to just like being at a show and people just kind of nodding your head, and that's like as far as things go here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just everything was alive there. They're really tapped in and tuned into that. I feel like they're just like, they come out of the womb just dancing to like
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good for me to step out of my comfort zone in that sense, and I really got to see like, man, like I better start moving, I better start dancing with this, because dance was always like I play music, and I've been playing drums since I was like 8 years old, but it started out with me just dancing. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as music hit my ears, I was just like, couldn't control it. So like, yeah, it brought me back to that and reconnected with that part of me that I'd kept pretty dormant. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
I want to touch on that, but it tie back to a previous note that you made of you're meeting someone and they're like, oh, I met a buddy, and they're like, oh, okay, well, you're pretty late now, and that is a concept that it came up even today in a conversation that I had with the team that I'm working on the platform and on the website, and of this manic focus on time and control and perfectionism. And I've started adapting a saying, progress over perfection, because we're always looking for perfection. When we look for progress, it feels like we can able to dial down slightly. And then one thing is that I'm still thinking of is growth over consistency. Growth over consistency is one I'm pondering on, because I find that if you do something consistently, you get results, but then you have that saying that, I can't remember who said this, maybe it was Stephen Pressfield, it was someone, I show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and Muse can find me if it wants or not, like I will be there.
Right.
While I've been trying to dial it back to, I'm going to stop forcing myself to do certain things at certain times and just follow what I feel inside. So I'm trying to decipher and find out what is it that is truth to me, and that is inner guidance, versus what is laziness and pure fun, and I don't want to deal with the discipline and taking care of things. So and that goes into what you were speaking of there. I felt like, all right, I've not implemented enough discipline in my day today, this past week, and this transferred into, for example, now, like that is one of the things that I struggle with. Like coming here, I ended up being 20 minutes past the time that we decided on, and that is I'm like, okay, what is the concept behind that, and what is the meaning behind that? And I know part of that is my own inner reality of self-love, because I get so trapped up in my own reality that also that if I am late, I lower the expectations, and now I don't feel like I can receive as much love, but it's part self-destructive too. I'm taking this in different angles and hitting it from different angles, but I know part of it is, all right, well, that's also a story I can tell myself. And then I go back into kind of the Jocko Willink approach, extreme ownership. Well, I can talk about all these reasons why something happens, or I can just take ownership of it. Like, Sebastian, are you just going to let this linger and tell these stories and be in your heart, or are you going to do something about it? So that is a journey that I'm on right now, embracing both of them, because I think there's beauty to both, like the Colombian culture, like the heart-centered culture, but also, okay, well, there's part of accountability. There's part of, okay, when you make agreements, how do you show respect, and how do you show discipline, not only for yourself but also for the other person, right?
And it's also, I think to piggyback on what you were saying, there is a role and a function to having that side of you that wants things to be like orderly and like that perfection. And I think there was a quote by Flaubert that I heard recently that just really stuck, and it's be orderly and disciplined in your life so that you can be violently original in your work. So it's like setting that stage for things to like come through and be present and in it, and then that flow. And that's all about having that discipline, like Pressfield was talking about. It's like, show up, and also don't take it too personally. I feel like it doesn't show up, the muse isn't there, you know?
How do you approach your work?
I'm trying to create more structure, and I'm not trying, I'm creating more structure in my chaos. There's a less linear, more of like a spontaneous approach to the art. Like, if I'm really inspired, sometimes I will just get lost and not remember all the other things I had to do, or just like, you know, like I want to ride the wave, I don't want to let it pass me by. So you can't really tame that and know when it's coming. But I've cultivated in my days practices in the morning that kind of get me primed up and ready, and be able to tap into that flow. Because it can be cultivated. It is like a skill.
For sure.
Just like attitude is a skill. Like whatever you're trying to produce, you can bring that.
One thing, what you're saying there is, if I don't do at least one meditation a day, if I don't do, and that is going to InQ, he says, meditation is going to the gym of letting go. And and some might say, well, why do I need to let go? Well, you don't want to carry so much stuff that you can't focus or be clear on what you need to do or want to do, or let creativity or muse come through you. Because if you're always holding on to things, it's going to be a hard experience. It's going to make life tougher too. And one of the key pieces too is the morning affirmations that I do, and the gratitude, and some of the things that I cultivate. Like even saying, today I pushed it, I did too much in the morning, because I try to help out my wife to get some meal prep done, and I didn't do the gratitude before my morning meeting, so I didn't set the stage. And part of this is I do accountability practices, and I say certain things. I'm, for example, I say it in Swedish, but I'm accountable, I'm reliable, I'm at least 1 minute early. And I feel it in my body too. But then when I don't say it, I am a very feeling person, and when I shut down my feelings, I become a very miserable person. And that's when I said early on, like, it's great to feel. It's great to feel, but it's also when I feel, and riding that wave, which is the most beautiful thing that you can do. How do you still dial it back, and how do you still? I think there's always a good need for lists, or writing things down and keeping track of things, to get too scatterbrained. But like you're saying, how do you reel yourself back? And the practice that we did here on the right before, like, I love myself, I forgive myself. That is something that I have alarms for. So I remember to do that, because I get so into, ideally I do it hourly. It doesn't happen. But to really start to remember, because I get so into things, I forget to feel my feelings. It sounds crazy.
No, I'm just thinking in my mind, like, if more people in the world had that alarm set.
Yeah, right?
What a different world we would be walking through. That's beautiful, man.
Yeah. What are practices that you have in your life?
Similar. A lot of breath work. A lot of like every morning, it's breath. It's man, you know, I do have some other like subconscious kind of things that I try to rewrite some programming from the past that is through like hypnotherapy, through different things that are just rewriting some of those hardwired things that are from the past. And those things really do shift my mind. It like creates a mental picture for what I'm creating instead of just aimlessly kind of just like waiting for it to show up.
What's an example of that?
Through the hypnosis.
Uh-huh.
So every night I fall asleep to this. It's my own voice. Like I'm guiding myself through hypnosis, and it's deep relaxation of your nervous system, so that you can put down your guard. You're like getting out of the conscious mind and stepping into what comes available in the subconscious. So you can have some really valuable insights, and things come through that wouldn't come through because you're just too locked into what your current state is. We're so driven by our subconscious, but our conscious mind only takes like 5% of our daily waking hours. So.
Sure. Is there something recent that has come through that you would be open to sharing?
I've been doing more writing. So like taking inventory and putting words to these things that have happened in the last 10 years, where I feel like I've made some strides and have let go of a lot of things that were, limiting me in my growth. So, I mean, just like when we were doing the breathing earlier, like my right eye, not my left eye, was like starting to tear up and welt up. I was just like, man, just taking those breaths and like saying I love you and I forgive you, like man, if we heard that more and could do that more often, it probably wouldn't have triggered that type of emotion in me. So there's so much that we can tap into and have that appreciation and that like joie de vivre, however, like that lust for like living and that feeling and engaging and everything. It can get easy to be lost in the sauce when like we're in this like attention economics where the media wants to make every problem your problem, and we can just be too tightly wound. And so anything that just can just like make my shoulders drop, like allow the present moment to speak instead of have some sort of future that's completely made up and fictional.
Sure. So I'm very intrigued about the recordings that you have. I've heard that from psychology books to, it could even be Tony Robbins to Joe Dispenza, there are a lot of people speaking of it. I've never tried it because it's kind of that border, like I need to put in effort, but I guess there's a slight shame in like, who am I to speak to myself? Isn't that kind of strange? But I see the value for sure. And now that I've doing the affirmations that I do every morning and speaking it out loud, and I do my movements, and I connect all the different senses. So I really feel it, and I feel my feelings, and I hear myself say it. It's so much more powerful than if I just think it. That is just one sense activated. How do you feel? What are the biggest changes that you've noticed now that you know you're doing this for a while?
Yeah, well, you get an opportunity to make new meaning to things that happened, and like we all have scenes from the past that are either traumatizing or had some sort of, whether it was something somebody said or somebody did.
Yeah.
So having the opportunity and the space to like look at it without feeling it and have, it's similar with a lot of like plant medicine, a lot of different things that they're diving into now, where they can like take these traumas and rewrite them or just reassess them in a new way that can be for you, and something that you can be grateful for. Like,
Yeah.
usually it's through the darkest times and the things that hurt the most where I find the most meaning, and where it drives my passion and my joy and the way to take pleasure in life. And so, yeah, the hypnosis has really been a process of taking those things and allowing them to be, and not have any type of judgment or letting them be there, and then like let them stay there and then move forward without them, kind of thing.
So I can only imagine that you're very different now compared to what you were like when you were in the restaurant industry, and also the club and the bar industry. So my wife was in the industry for quite a few years, and I can relate to the Latin American aspect and your connection to that. I'm a huge salsa lover. I don't dance enough, but I love it. It's my favorite way to connect with dance and movement. And so my wife is half Ecuadorian, and so we get that aspect from her family. One of my best friends growing up was from Chile, so I was very early on immersed in the Latin American culture, and what you're saying with the heart, but with the passion and just not holding back emotions, and then the playfulness is incredible. So that is a little off topic, but dialing it back to the restaurant industry, and some of the there's immense pressure, and it's kind of the play hard, work hard, play hard, and you're freaking going all the time. There's a lot of, I mean, from my wife, and I know to a degree, I mean, there's a lot of drinking on the job in many places, drugs on the job, after the job, all the time. But in the same time, when you go to restaurants, you meet what it seems like some of the kindest waiters and waitresses. And I'm not saying if you're doing that there's anything that makes you a bad person, but it seems like a lot of them have it together. Like, what was your experience like of the plenty of years that you spent in the industry? And there was a reason why you spent so many in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol is a powerful conduit for things that you regret. I think that industry, being surrounded by it and also having that energy exchange with people, so there is like a level of you get to hear a lot and see a lot from the people that come in. And when I was working in a private club, it was seeing the same people over and over and serving the same people the same drinks, and just seeing, like, getting to hear what other people's lives were, and I mean, I had some of the best fun. Like, it was just a wild ride, and I definitely got what I needed from it. But it comes with a price, and I had to be really armored in that way too. Like, having that energy exchange and seeing some people that were using that type of medicine to damper any type of thing that was, they didn't want to feel, or they weren't ready to feel. Or, it's like we all have these ways of, these mechanisms to get through life. And so that part was what really got me out of it. And so having that armor up, and it can be exhausting, like having to, not only like be a night owl, and that's like kind of against my nature, but also holding space for people in that way. And it seems kind of funny to say it's like holding space at a bar, but like,
no, I hear you. No, for sure, that's what it is.
Yeah, so part of me really felt limited in that, but I was also just, trying to have fun with it, and it was great, but I just couldn't imagine. Like, I made a promise to myself at 30. I was just like, I couldn't continue. It was just going to eat me up. And I got to see people that, it got to rip apart because they just couldn't pull out of the wave that was like driving them forward. So, that course correction, like you were saying, healthy striving towards something better, and having that awareness around what your trajectory is. So Yeah, I hope that.
Yeah. So yeah, when my wife speaks of it, it's also it becomes a wild ride, but it's also a dance of sorts. Like you create this incredible, almost of a community. Like you make friends too. And I feel like it's in a different way. I was in the restaurant industry for a very short amount of time, but it's a different type of feeling, and it's more of camaraderie. I feel like than other workplaces that I've had. And then there is, it becomes this place where you meet so many people, and that was the most enticing part about it when I was in it. And what you're saying, holding space, like you can truly be curious and learn about other people's lives, their situations, what they're going through. You can just listen, and it's a new adventure every single day. And then you can serve them, and it feels amazing to serve someone or just help someone out. But what did you feel like led you there in the first place? How did you get into the industry?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, man, if you really dial it back and go towards like, growing up. So there was just learning things that like in school, like I moved across the coast and I was told I had learning disabilities and things that kind of made me really decide to, when we're young, we're taking all our information and learning about ourselves through the eyes of others, and I was being told that I had a learning disability, like I wasn't good, I wasn't going to progress in certain ways, and so I just put my energy towards music and art. I didn't really apply myself until probably like 20, 21, when I was like just taking some philosophy courses, and I was like, oh, I actually kind of care about this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was, most of my life was just being in music, and I was a bit of a like carved my own way through that, and with that I was playing a bunch of bands and playing music, and needed a job that could be flexible and let me take nights off like that. And that was bartending.
Okay.
Yep.
And then eventually you were saying after Colombia, now we're dialing it back, and you were going to tell the story that something you had, what made you decide that you want to leave Colombia, and what happened after that?
Yeah, it was just that feeling, that burnout, and seeing, like I could have easily renewed my contract and opened some other places with them, but I really got to see and evaluate what that would have done to me, I think, spiritually. And so
what was it doing to you?
It was kind of like what I was saying, kind of just giving it, feeding those vices, and like the environment and the lifestyle was starting to wear on me. And I just didn't like the person I was with, and I like got to spend all the time I have with them. So,
yeah. Sure.
So yeah, I just knew that something more was out there for me. And it wasn't until I did like a 10-day retreat in the jungle with some plant medicine or some shaman, and just got to really pick apart the way that life was, just how it was affecting me more than I could see. And I also got to see like what my potential and where I could get the like higher reaches of that if I were to make different choices. Yeah.
So what did you start doing? Do you feel like it just happened like that, and then you started, all right, I'm done, I'm moving out of here, I'm starting a new life? Or was it progressive? What was that journey like, making that transition?
Yeah, it was really hard. Like everybody I knew, all my friends, like were tied into that. So it was really, a lot of the travel was a way to peel away from it and really get to like just dive in and look at what I was like really brought me joy and what got me really excited. Whether it was relationships or things like that, I often would put, myself on the back burner, or just like that people-pleasing quality where it's just like here for others, but not really taking care of myself and what I wanted. And so a lot of the solitude, a lot of the, travel, like being like just a novice and just like experiencing different cultures and different ways of living. It was a lot of self-examination.
Was that always a part of your life, the self-examination, or was that something you really started dialing in? Because you mentioned philosophy, that you started getting interested in that at 23, 24, or maybe a little earlier. But was that part of your life, like through and through? Was that something that started coming with age?
No, I think I always, I think I was always like very curious. That led me to a lot of different things. I always like wanted to know how things worked, and I wanted to like, whether it was music or something like that, I would like dissect a piece of music, and I would just like want to figure out how they did it, and like, watch them play, and like I was very kinesthetic learner. So yeah, that gave me I think a different kind of viewpoint on life. I was terrible at like a lot of things, and like figuring out why they didn't connect, or why I wasn't like able to fit a certain model. Kind of gave me it felt like a disadvantage, but now that I see it, it's actually like a superpower of mine. Like I can go in and evaluate and see things that aren't always super visible.
With the music, with the art, was that still a part of your life in the industry, restaurant industry as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I still do. Like I still have some studios that I work out of, and I get some gigs once in a while, but right now nobody's really playing live shows and everything.
Sure.
But yeah, it's definitely still a love of mine, and I kind of dip in and out of it. I don't it's not as much like artwork is one of those things I get to kind of be the director and the producer of it. I don't need other people and like rely on other musicians. It's more like a solo sport.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why I do enjoy it, and I do love the community that I get with art, with the music.
Yeah. So there is a friend of mine. He's from Germany. He was on the podcast earlier. Jonas is his name, and he went to the United States. A big reason was because he wanted to continue his passion while he still was studying. His passion is running. He is incredibly fast human being, and so he because what happens in at least Europe overall is when you stop, it's all club sports, and you play up until college usually, and there are a few who continue, but a lot of people stop. But he wanted to continue. He was like, well, the way to do that is go here to the United States. And he still runs. It's more now, if he really wants to be engaged, it's slightly harder on a club level. But it's also what I've experienced myself, the more and deeper I got into corporate life or just a professional career, the more it felt like, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to enjoy myself with, for example, I speak German too. I'm half German, but I don't dedicate any time towards that. But when I do speak it, when I do read it, or when I do watch something in German, then it starts connecting back to my grandmother, who I spoke to earlier. She's from Germany, and to very fond memories and connections to Germany. Or when I do play basketball, it barely happens, but when I do, I get into this flow state super easily, and but I barely dedicate time towards doing that. And especially when I was at, you can say, my most productive, but when I was the most laser focused on my career, a lot of that stopped. And especially as I met my wife, we had a child, all of that went out the door. And it made me very cold. Like, it made me very shut off and cold. And hearing you maintaining your passions in life is incredible. And I think that's such a valuable thing for so many to hear. There's one book that I recommend anyone's Rethinking Success. And this gentleman really goes into diving into different parts of success and how what is success to you? Like, who are you looking to please? What is your audience? But one of the things is also, how do you emerge both your professional reality and your personal reality? Like, are you going to live two different realities, or are you going to merge the two of them? And his recommendation is, well, try to merge them. Like, don't try to be two different people. Like, that's not going to be good for you long term or anyone else. Like, the more you merge them and the more you're whole with yourself, the better you're going to feel. And his recommendation was a very small one, but do 10 minutes a day, or not a day, a week only, of something, a passion of yours. Because I know there's so many people who are so lost out there that they're like, oh, well, that surfboard, for example, that we're looking at right now, like, that you have. Like, I had a surfboard. One of my greatest dreams growing up was to one day surf. I bought a surfboard almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago, in Florida, when I was living in Missouri and I was on spring break. I used it once. And then it was sitting, and I traveled several places, and I brought it across the entire United States. And recently, a few months ago, I donated it, and it was a little too short. I couldn't handle it anyway, so I needed a longboard. But the principle of it is, part of it is when you get a family, your priorities change. But it's really seeking that freedom, seeking that moment when you lose sight of everything else. You call it the wave. Like, getting so immersed into something, you lose track of time, you lose track of space. You're just one with what you're doing and getting into that flow state. And you just strike me as that is something that is a big part of your life right now, but you never really lost it.
Yeah, man. I try to cultivate it, and it's one of those things that's it inspired. Like, it can be just as simple as just like seeing a really beautiful sight and just going and witnessing something that gives you a sense of wonder and awe.
Yeah.
Like, that can trigger a sense of like, yeah, there is no time in that sense, like in that space. And you said something really interesting with like speaking a different language, and it's a part of our brain where we're like accessing a different part where we become something different. Like we're there's like another character that comes through when I speak Spanish. You know?
Yes, for sure.
And so I think there's something to be said about the words that we're telling ourselves and the words that we're speaking. We're always painting that reality with whatever, words we're speaking. So
how would you describe that character who speaks Spanish? How is that different?
He's a great dancer.
Yeah.
You can like whip up a sweet guacamole anytime. I think it took me a while. Like, just learning Spanish was such a journey for me, and learning to let go of like sounding like a fool. And I can't roll my R's, so it's like not conducive for most things in Spanish. And so I think, I think there's a lot more freedom. I can relate in that with Spanish, because it doesn't have to be super calculated and correct, and it can just be like messy, and I'm not like there's like less ego attached to it now, just because I've accepted that.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not gonna be writing poetry in Spanish.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I hadn't really like thought about that before, but when you said that definitely like I can resonate.
I'm gonna do one quick check. We're gonna edit this out.
Sure.
Just, you gotta be kidding me. The maximum recording time has been hit. Movie recording has been stopped automatically. The maximum recording time has been reached. What does that even mean? Speaking of the languages, and what you were talking about, stepping into a different reality of who you are and who you can be, and letting go. That is really one of the main things that I discovered here coming to the United States. It allowed me to fully let go of my past, of everything in Sweden, of everything from my identity to the reality, to the way of being, to my family, to expectations, to who I thought I needed to be, society, everything. And I realized, wait, I can just do whatever I want. Nobody knows who I am, so they can't hold me accountable to be that person. I'm like, wow, okay, well, let me have some fun here. Let me shape a new reality.
Yeah.
And it was so freaking liberating.
Yeah.
And it was so freeing. And so many times we get stuck in these stories of just living these repeated, just stories of who we are and who we've always been. And we get so stuck in them because we follow these routines. We're very routine as human beings. And then who do our parents expect us to be? Who do our friends expect us to be? Coworkers and so forth. And we never really evolve that much, because part of it is we're afraid. Because if we start changing, people are now going to start questioning, well, what are you doing? Like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? Things like that. And it takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of just inner knowing and wisdom and self-love. I would say self-love mainly, to just feel like, yeah, like this is me. Like I'm growing, I'm changing, and that's okay. Instead of, this happens when I talk to my family now, and it's been 11 years in the United States, I still go back to those certain ways of being that I used to be when I was in Sweden. And it's very much more reserved, not as, I don't express myself as much. I don't feel my emotions. I'm not as, you can say, passionate. I don't really get into things in the same way. And that's one of the things I love about the United States is and part of this podcast too, the extreme way of taking things performance-wise, but also exploration-wise. And with the German piece, like you said too, I kind of step into a different identity there as well. And it's interesting, depending on the culture and where you go, you experience so many different aspects of yourself too, but you also start realizing, whoa, reality can be so different based off of my way of viewing the way of life, but also what TV says, and what everyone else around me says. And what you were saying with Colombia, time now has a completely different meaning. And even going, for me, I had aha moments going to Thailand and the rural parts of Thailand, and being a volunteer there at one point, and seeing and being at a school home, and all these children didn't have any parents, and there were, maybe 200-300, and they all slept in the same room. And it was dirty and it was dusty, and they all slept in this massive room. And when we came there, we wanted to give them so many different things, and there were some of the volunteers that the bottom things, and the biggest thing that I just realized that they all craved for was just love. Like, all they wanted was just love. And it just hit me in my heart, and it just struck me like, shit, like, we take all these things for granted. Yeah. When the biggest thing that we all just need is just love. Like, we like all these, just having parents, just having people around us who care for us. And here these children are, at least they're not on the streets, they're with each other, but just having someone outside come in and be with them and play with them and hug them, like, that means the world to them. And it's incredibly humbling. And going to Peru opened up my eyes of, and it's an interesting thing being in Oakland with Black Lives Matter and the big wave that is hitting the United States. And I think it is bound to happen at one point or another, and the changes that needs to happen in this country, just worldwide. But then in Latin America, and I can't speak to Latin America overall, I know Peru, and I know this happens in other countries too, I did not realize the racism that still and is occurring there. I thought it was it's very much of a tight-knit community. It's all a lot of unity, passion, togetherness. What I did not realize, the indigenous people, they're usually, at least in Peru, in poverty. They're the ones that are looked down upon. It's if you have some inheritance of the European descent, then you're standing above them. And there's significant discrimination. You can even say racism. I had no freaking clue. And they call these favelas, these impoverished areas. They have the opposite there. If you live in the inner city, you're rich. If you live in the hills, you're poor. Here, well, it's a little bit. Usually, if you live in the hills, at least in Los Angeles, you're rich. But here, you can also, in the city, you're rich too, sometimes. But you get my point. But the path I'm going down here is, I realized a new. You can say white privilege to a new degree, and even though Sweden has not taken part of that, it's still part of, you can say, Europe, and part of. Just the privilege that I get by being there. And it's sad to a degree, because it's been so indoctrinated in some of these indigenous people that they look down, like they don't really look you in the eyes. They don't really, you can feel like they have a view of that they're less than you. I'm like, whoa, like this is strange, but it's really eye-opening to feel like I'm this well-traveled person who've been to this many different countries, and all of a sudden I go to Peru or to Thailand, and my entire world just gets changed and gets altered, and all these things that we talk about with global warming, or even with how we need to change our society. Start at home first, but first and foremost, and this is something my wife and I talk about a lot, is to start with yourself. Find a love for yourself. Like if Macklemore has this saying, don't try to change the world, do that what you love, and do that for the rest of your life, and maybe one day the world will change. And it made me so humble, and I haven't thought about it in a long time, but just realizing that there are so many different people in this world. And when it comes to global change, or a global climate change, there's some people who even know of that word, because they're in a position where they're just looking for food on their plate on an every single day basis. And I think also, there's a way of incorporating the higher powers, and we all who are more privileged to make a change, or to think outside of ourselves. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, what can we do for self-discovery? Also take into account, okay, well, there are more people. The more we are united, the more we get on board, the more better we all do as just as a world, the more we can make a change. And it's not always black and white. We need to reduce emissions to this, and we need to do, we need to eat better. We need to change the way our habits. Yeah, but it's first and foremost a change with ourselves. Like, we need to look at ourselves. And we can point the finger all day long, and especially with I'm going on a little bit of a rant, but the Democrats and Republicans, you do this, you do that. I mean, shit, like, let's just see one another as human beings. Like, there was this episode and then the other day by Aubrey Marcus, and it's been coming up more and more, is is human trafficking and the sex slavery. And it just puts freaking perspective to your life. Like, there are people who can't control their lives because they're literally slaves, and they're forced to have sex, and there are children in this position. And it's such a horrible reality, yet we're talking about, oh, well, we need to tweak this or change this law, or you're wrong for doing this, or you're a Trump supporter, or you're a Biden supporter, whatever. Like, that doesn't fucking matter. Like, if we don't solve the basic things, like, yeah, it's great. Like, let's come together and let's have good, like, standards of living and how to rule, or how to govern this country. But let's take care of things that matter. And what they were prompting to is, like, we need to change this by what we demand from the media, but also that starts with, okay, we need to stop being so, what you talked about, hypnotized. What's incredible, you're hypnotizing yourself, but many times we get hypnotized by others, by society, by media, by billboards, by TV, by music, by everything else around us. And tying it full circle, doing the traveling is exactly what can really start opening your eyes. If you're open to it, understand, am I open to looking at what is life like in a different country? Or even dropping into journeys like meditation. For you, you're saying like plant medicines has been helpful. There are many different ways. If you start exploring what can reality be like, I think that starts to open up your eyes, and then eventually, hopefully you can give that to someone else.
Yeah, man. It's the unity. I think that it's so hard for us to tap into that part of our brain when we're stuck in survival mode. And there is that degree of separateness, you know, it kept us alive. It was the way we're wired, because tribal times, if we were unfamiliar to somebody or another tribe, we probably, you know, we weren't granted access to certain things, foods that weren't familiar, we wouldn't eat because it could kill us, you know. So we're wired to like reject what's unfamiliar, and sometimes that can look like, you know, when we're traveling and being a foreign object to other people, you know, it can take us out of that. But yeah, man, when we get to blur our edges and really see one another as humans and brothers and sisters, we get to like, create way better living situation for the rest of the world that we all rely on. And yeah, things like that, like child trafficking and the things that like, it's like, yeah, when you look at what people are talking about and what we're really putting our energy into, and how it's just the petulance of tribalism, man. It's just, it's not, it's hard to remember that we're all just like matter and energy tangled with one another. You know?
The path you're on right now, and there's more of this now in your life than ever has been before. And I know I'm on this journey where I went from having a solid job, solid income, health insurance and all that, to having none of that. It's a path that you've been on now for a while. What has that journey been like for you? And yeah, what will it look like in the future, you think?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. So your reality shifting into, you mind speaking to your reality today and how it has evolved since you left the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
And what is your day to day like right now? Because you're doing something completely different.
Yeah. It was, you know, reinventing myself. After
Yeah.
that, you know, I got really into health and wellness and just discovering practices that can really clean up my you know, the body I live in. And I started coaching and did some like holistic lifestyle coaching, and being able to help others was really helpful for me to see, you know, like who I needed to become to be of service in that way. And so yeah, it's just a lot of it's scratching my own itch, and things that, like practices that have helped me move through certain things that I'm now able to share with people. And yeah, where that's going, it's just consistently expanding and finding my edge, like where I'm not fully expressed, like leaning into those things that still make me uncomfortable and make me want to like distract myself with something else just because it's hard to feel, you know, like that's where I need to go. That's where the treasure is, you know, like the places that we don't want to go.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good question where that'll lead me. But I think it's the journey we're all on, and being able to share it with people and to like be able to talk and have these kind of conversations is where, you know, some we get to make those little course corrections like you were talking about.
Sure. What are you leaning into right now?
There's a few things. Yeah, leaning into looking at what if I look at my receipts of how I'm spending my day, what did I accomplish in a day and things like that. I'm leaning into getting out of that like mechanical doingness and trying to be in the being a little bit more. Like there's so much that I'm like, I can get wrapped up in courses and try to like get certified with everything like it's a merit badge, and I'm trying to fill this whole like this like trying to prepare myself to have the answers to everything kind of thing. Without really taking the time to really apply it and integrate it. So I think it's really been a process of peeling back and doing less and bringing more presence to what I'm doing. If I like I've been in this writing practice where I like sit and like every day it's a 3-hour block, or I'll do 90 minutes with like a little bit of stretching and movement, just to like show up like Pressfield, to lean into the resistance and the things that are scary, like whether it's a conversation I need to have with somebody, showing up in my truth. A lot of times in the past it would be just me like sugarcoating things or just trying to avoid, or like lying by omission, just like not sharing how I was feeling.
Sure.
So yeah, those are the places that I'm still exploring. And
you said 3 hours a day, you're right?
Yeah, about 90 minutes. I'll
90.
like,
sorry, I made that into 3 hours. So
yeah, it's like 90 minutes, and then I gotta move around while I'm doing it, so like a 20-minute break.
And that is just reflective and an outlet. You're not writing with a mission like this will one day be an article or published to a greater book of work, or is that part of it too?
No, there's no destination.
Yeah, okay.
It's more just like having conversations about things that don't normally get expressed. Like you get to kind of, it's like a way to process information that doesn't normally get out. So yeah, I think the squirrel running around in my head,
Yeah,
it's like in a little place, like, so I don't have to think about it anymore.
So there are many different, you can say, tools that you have in your tool belt, and many things that have helped you along your path, and that you help clients with, and that you teach. What have been the most significant to you? And if you were to give any tips, like what would you highlight?
Yeah, man, there's so many. I think anything, mindfulness, meditation, anything that can turn the hum of like anxiety down in the mind and get us present. There's just so much wisdom that could come from letting the body speak and letting ourselves go there. Yeah, it sounds super simple, but it's really not. So stop.
Yeah,
just,
sure.
Like, sit with yourself and like be away from any expectation or any anticipation. Just like letting go and surrendering into the moment can be really, really challenging. So yeah, that's been the most productive for me.
What is a good way of starting that?
I like, I mean, there's so many apps and things like that now, which I haven't really gotten too into, but breathwork, like 20 conscious breaths, just resetting your nervous system, and like noticing where your awareness comes, like when you veer off, and it's just that like nudge to go back into it, which is like what we're all striving for. It's just like being aware when we get off track.
Sure.
And so yeah, just taking inventory on breath.
Yeah. What are there any other practices that come to mind?
Play.
Play. Yeah. Yeah.
Play.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there, like be in the sun, be in the elements, be in nature, connect with the thing that's bigger than you.
Sure.
I think that's like always a sense of inspiration, and we get to, yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that we've written ourselves out of nature, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's one of my favorite ways to reground and be in myself.
Sure. That is one of the ways that I miss to get around is by bike. I do it every now and then, not too often. Yeah. But it makes such an immense difference. And it is a little bit of a play aspect to it, but getting outside in the elements. I had a teacher early on, so this is in high school in Sweden. He was very much all about being local, buying local, sustaining, being regenerative with anything that you do. So he would wear a Mickey Mouse t-shirt that was pink with like really worn jeans every single day. That was his outfit, and he would wash it. And he made a very clear point of, you need to be close to where you work so you can get there however you want, and there will be less emissions. You should not be buying new clothes, and nothing new if you can. There's plenty of enough that we can buy used, so just do that. And it doesn't matter as much of what you look like. It's more about this holistic community. And why I'm bringing him up is he was very much on extreme, but this was maybe 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he was, I mean, that's pretty early with coming up with all those, being in that direction back then. Now it's more prevalent. But what I'm saying with that is, when you start getting outside and getting on your bike, or when you start connecting to play, like for example, on Wednesday I was running and doing sprints on the grass, and or playing, and I still don't do this too often, like basketball, or I was playing with my brother-in-law Sebastian, who have you met, just football, just throwing the football around and taking off my shoes and running in the grass. When you start doing that, and if you really think about it, like this really, really enjoy it. Like really enjoy, and especially being in nature, doing things like that. Because the more you do it and more time you start spending outside, the more you realize, like, what are we really doing to this earth? Like, how are we, what am I really doing with if you really take it a step further, when I drive so far, what kind of car am I driving? What am I actually buying? How much of it is it that I'm buying? And I try to steer away from that so many times before in my past, because it was uncomfortable. Oh, I want to be like everyone else. Oh, well, I like buying things. I like, I want that muscle car. I want to have that. I want to be that macho man. And yeah, but it's this consumerism. And then the funny thing is, that didn't bring me any joy. Well, it brought me temporarily joy. It was nice every now and then, but really, like, when I have the most fun and when I'm in my being the most is when you're saying, when I'm playing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's incredible. And that's something that is not what you're seeing as like the productivity hack, like, oh, like hack your days, these are 10 ways. Play is the one that I probably struggle with the most. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Cool. Yeah, no, man, it seems counterproductive, but yeah, I think it's a nice pause.
Yeah.
On everything, and like you get to be in that childlike wonder and like imagine things, and like I thrive on it. Like if I don't get surfing, or if I'm like, if I'm not on my bike enough, or if I'm not out in the wilderness, like I get just like, I can feel it on my body, like
sure.
the pressure.
Sure.
So it's like a release valve for me.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And that is, I became a better, even in corporate, better professional when I was doing this, when I was out in nature, in nature especially. because it was such a reset, and you connect to something higher, you connect to energies. And I was always telling my friend, my work buddy, like, nature is my church. Like, that's when I go to connect. And because it changes my state, it changed my state completely. And I've especially living in a city area right now, the more time, if I spend several weeks there, and if I don't go, even if I go outside, it makes a bit of a difference. But if I go to a park, yeah. But when I really go into nature, what now seemed so pressing and so daunting and so difficult, and I felt such stress, now goes out the window. I'm like, life is beautiful. I am here. I'm alive. Like, this is fun. Like, I enjoy myself, and everything else, it'll take care of itself and come back, let's say the next day or after that event, or after in nature. Everything is so much more at peace, and usually you see things so much clearer. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. It's always available.
Yeah. So, is there anything else on that note that you think is like, wow, I don't want to leave them off with at least saying this? What do you feel like those are the most important things?
Yeah, I think find the things that make you lose track of time and bring you joy. And like you were saying, just like a little more kindness in the world, a little more like acceptance of ourselves.
Yeah.
And less judgment and harsh criticism towards ourselves will help us be better people to the world around us.
Yeah.
So, I think that's it, man. Love yourself.
That's a beautiful way of, I think, wrapping this up. Mike, it's been incredible. Thank you for setting the stage and welcoming me into your home, and just how you're showing up in this world, what you're sharing, and your freaking art. Go to freaking check out Mike's art, See by Land. Is there anywhere else people, if they want to see who you are, what you do, is there anywhere else they can find you?
Social media, Instagram is usually where I post. Get to know me a little better. See by Land or Live Well, LIVWELL are the two kind of outlets for me.
Okay.
But yeah, man, thanks for coming. So good to have you here, man. Stoked to do this. We've been talking about it. So always welcome here.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike shared so many deep and valuable insights when it comes to play, just enjoying life and exploring, being curious, being brave, and opening up to, okay, what can life offer instead of being rigid and stuck and productive. There's so much to this life and so much to this world. So I'm grateful that Mike tuned in, you tuned in. And if you want to connect with Mike and See by Land, his artist work, as well as his coaching business, which is Live Well, and then you have See by Land, which is his artistic creations. You can find all the links in the show notes. And until next time, I'm sending you so much love.